is going to speak on cholecystitis. Dr. Sanjay, please.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Thank you for allowing me to introduce Dr. Venugopal Gauri. Dr. Venugopal Gauri did his BHMS from HKES Homeopathic Medical College, Gulbarga in 1993, and later his MD in Organon of Medicine from GD Memorial Medical College in Patna. He has been practicing in Hyderabad since 27 years. He has contributed to more than 500 articles in the national news daily, The Hindu. He is an honorary physician with Dr. C.L. Modi's charitable clinics with focus on lifestyle and metabolic disorders. He is an associate editor of Medicina Futura Homeopathica, which is on the anvil of completing 100 issues now. He is also the co-convener and treasurer of Homeopathic Medical Association of Telangana. Welcome, sir. Welcome to this session, and please share your knowledge with us.
Namaskar to the patron of Karnataka Qualified Homeopathic Doctors Association, and Dr. B.D. Patelji. Namaskar to Chairman Dr. H.L. Swamiji. Namaskar to Dr. Shripad Hegdeji, the President of the Association. And warm greetings and namaskar to also Dr. Shubha, General Secretary of the Association. And a very good afternoon on the second day of 2022 to all the participants who took their time off for us this afternoon. Indeed, it's a great opportunity given by this association. I'm grateful to Dr. B.D. Patelji, whom we have heard in Hyderabad at our Homeopathic Medical Association of Telangana about a couple of years ago. And we are thankful for that. It was a very resourceful presentation, and we would have wanted to hear him more often, but for the COVID intervening. But I'm sure we'll take this opportunity on Zoom in the days to come. And anything related to Karnataka is always a pleasant thing for me, because that is my second home, having studied at Gulbarga under the tutelage of my teacher, Dr. Sampath Raoji. Very resourceful person, an intelligent person, and a hardworking person, a soldier of homeopathy. And I'm sure you all know that he's recuperating from an illness, but the grit and determination that he's been showing to recover is a treat to watch to the eyes. And he's having a pleasant outcome. Let me also inform you. And we look forward to meeting you all again with him. And having done my BHMS, I had the opportunity of coming back to my hometown, where I worked under the guidance and advice of Dr. Sivashankar Kunapareddy ji, a man with 55 years of experience to date and continues to practice today. And it is because of him that, like as Dr. Srinivaslu ji was talking about pathological prescription, he was the one who inspired me into this line of thinking. And it is very difficult to think otherwise apart from this line. And that is the reason why, after being practicing in Hyderabad for this amount of years, it has become a Bhagyanagar for me, practicing in this style. And I'm also thankful to my teacher, Dr. Gopal Krishnaji, who is my constant guide and support, and my senior, and who is also the president of Homeopathic Medical Association of Telangana now. And under his guidance, we have rolled out 97 issues of Medicina Futura Homeopathica. And it will be an honor for me to also tell you that the first online version of this journal is coming out in January. The soft launch was on the last day of 2021. But we'll post you, and we'll exchange articles along with the e-magazine that you are having. It will be a great honor. Patelji sir will be the guidance for both these things, and our Dr. Sivashankar ji is actually the chief advisor and also the editor of our journal. Having said that, it's a great honor to open the innings with Dr. Srinivaslu ji, and As they say in cricket, the best way to face the new ball is by being at the non-striker's end and allow your other speaker to face the barrage of questions and see how the pitch is doing. So now that I know, I'm in a little safer spot. Thank you, Dr. Srinivas for that. And I also thank the association for giving me that opportunity to bat or next second. So one of the things that has been affecting the population at this point of time the world over is this tricky condition of this cholecystitis, the inflammation of the gallbladder actually, and it is a not a vestigial organ, but it is a very silent organ, just like the liver. As they say earlier on in life or in society or in our cultures, people would imagine that the life resided in the liver, and that's the reason why most of the earlier talk about liver would be agar kaleje mein himmat hai, and all that. But behind that silent organ liver, there is another silent mechanism, the gallbladder, which stays silent and does its job without any complaint or non-currently goes about it about its job. So it is so now cholecystitis means the inflammation of the gallbladder. This vestige more than a vestigial organ. But why are we talking about it today? Is because the culture, the society, the civilization that we are in today is in a stage of stasis. Everything is fast moving, whether it is the emails, whether it is the social media, whether it is the governance, probably whichever side you may be on. Things seem to be going at a fast pace, but all the work that needs to be done today is from a desk, whether it is a homeopath who is not even moving a few steps to get to his repertory and search for his symptoms, or it is definitely nobody in this world, or very few people in this world are in an occupation where it involves movement. When I talk about stasis and stagnation, I'm sure, I mean, people from Bangalore will think I'm talking about the traffic. It is equally bad in Hyderabad, and where the distance, as they say in WhatsApp, is measured in the amount of time rather than the kilometers or something. So it is the stasis. So the challenge that we have in facing the treatment of cholecystitis is getting the gallbladder out of this stasis and helping it contract, helping it promptly release the bile that it has been storing for a while, and honoring the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, the message that comes across from it, and honoring the requisition from the duodenum to release the bile juice promptly. So now the challenges that we have are, number one, relieve the stasis. Number two, see that this doesn't again recur. Number three, avoid the surgeon's knife. Having said that, the best of medicine today, the mainstream medicine, if at all, if there is a huge progress in the world over, it is because of surgery, I mean, the skill that they have called their own. Of course, surgery is a inevitable thing where it is required, but then we can employ some remedies that we can to see that the stagnation gets away and that patient doesn't reach the surgeon's table. So we have very little time in between. That is the inflammation, which can be 3 days, the golden period, as they say. If they reach the surgeon's table, they say the white blood cell count is not more than 16,000. Come on, let's go ahead and operate the patient. And if he's lucky to reach a little later than 3 days, and it is less than 6 days, and if the WBC count is mounting, that means there is an evidence of secondary infection, and the patient needs from that is where our window of opportunities, right from the time when, whether it is the first 3 days, whether the golden period when the patient reaches her, also load, watch him closely, and I'm sure we can help the patient out of the crisis for now, and also to see that it doesn't recur in the days to come. Now, cholecystitis, it's always a pleasure also to treat acute variants, and realizing your scope and prognosis. 5 overs and 80 runs to get, it's not easy, and the WBC count is against you, but it should be gettable. But at the same time, see that the run rate is not beyond you. So in that sense of the term, it's always a honor to treat acute cases, because you treat a very chronic case, very stubborn case that has been troubling the patient for over 2 decades, say an urticaria or a psoriasis or some multiple sclerosis for that matter. End of the day, 3-4 months down the line, the patient could still come back and tell you, I've been doing a lot of yoga, I've changed my diet, and I'm just following my wife's advice, and I'm not, arguing with her or whatever. And very little credit goes to the homeopath or his system of medicine. But when it is an acute case, definitely there is no doubt that most of his concentration is on the fact that he has taken homeopathic medicine and he has slided out of the crisis because of our remedies. So it is indeed a great opportunity for us to always treat conditions. So most of the time it is because of the stones in the gallbladder. And let's understand what happens in acute cholecystitis, or even for that matter in the long range of chronic cholecystitis, is that gradually phospholipase is released from the lining of the gallbladder. There's a lecithin that is released, and the lipolecithin damages the wall of the gallbladder. Then there is an inflammation that is ensuing. The prostaglandins are not going to keep quiet, and they come in the way of blood supply, and then it is always a safe ground for the bacteria secondary infect to. But that is where our job comes, to see that this sequence of events is subdued and it doesn't work up further. So acalculous cholecystitis is also the inflammation of the gallbladder, where you can see in patients who do not have any stones in the gallbladder, as the name suggests, obviously. And there are some conditions, like when the patient is in ICU and recovering from an acute illness. We have seen a lot of COVID patients who have been in the ICU and inordinately, even in the multisystemic inflammatory changes that have happened in children who have got affected with COVID-19. There was a pericholecystic edema. There was an inflammation that was threatening along the lining and also causing pneumonitis, as we all know. And there are other conditions like burns, and there are even the emotional trauma that can cause this acute cholecystitis. And it is a challenge, because most of the times it is not easy to diagnose. But having said that, this is also a window of opportunity for a homeopath, because it's not easy for an allopath to go for the surgical intervention at that point of time. The mainstream medicine have the patient.
So sorry to interrupt, your voice is breaking in between.
Sorry about that. I'll try, ma'am. I'll try being closer, and probably, yeah, I'll change the internet connection, but I should be online.
Okay.
So, the surgical intervention cannot be the point of choice, and the can sometimes be reversible. So it is always a tricky time for the mainstream medicine physicians to opt for that course. And that also gives us a window of opportunity of this particular thing, as the logical course suggests, that there is likely that there is a necrosis of the gallbladder, there can be a perforation of the gallbladder, and the mucus and the bile that is has been accumulating in the gallbladder could get break open through into the vacant spaces of the abdomen and cause peritonitis and then sepsis and shock. It's a very, very critical area. And not to forget the fact that this condition can also cause pancreatitis, which can be a death sentence if not addressed right away. So it is imperative that we watch the patient closely, order for the investigations that are necessary at that point of time to see that he doesn't go through this course of bad times. So as we all know, what are the investigations that we can watch out for? We can always ask for a complete blood picture, and 18,000 of white blood cell count. Usually I don't take up the case unless the patient is in ICU, because that's not definitely the only treatment that the patient is going to be. And so when it is less than 17 or 18,000 of the total white blood cell count, it is better to take up the case and watch every 24 hours, order for a WBC or a CBC count every 24 hours to see that it is reducing, to understand that you are medication. Got it. So what are the usual symptoms that we come across in these patients of cholecystitis, whether it is acute or chronic? We all know that there's a pain in the right upper quadrant, and when the patient happens to inhale deeply and you press over the 12th rib, you will find that there is tenderness. But also apart from that, we know the Boas sign, where there is hyperesthesia over the area. So the pain could be sometimes in the dorsal region. The pain could radiate up to the back of the inferior area of the right scapula. And the patient, such patients usually complain of nausea, vomiting, retching to that an extent, and also they have fullness of abdomen, flatulent distension of abdomen, and not to forget the fact that jaundice is a symptom that shows up in some cases of cholecystitis, and there is an ensuing fever. So let us understand what are the gallbladder diseases that actually lead to this condition of cholecystitis. So we all know that gallbladder stones are the first prime reason for a patient to develop cholecystitis. And as we have all read in the medical textbooks, a fat female, 40, fertile, and flatulent are usually all the F's that are noted down under that can cause cholecystitis. And in the days to come, if this is not addressed, it can lead to chronic cholecystitis, and someday it could be subacute cholecystitis too. And most of the causes are the stones breaking through from the gallbladder, and the junction where the hepatic ducts are coming down, and the cystic duct joining them. And there is an area of the bile duct. If it gets blocked, there is congestion in the gallbladder, and that leads to gallbladder stones. And if the stone is beyond the bile duct, in the common bile duct, then it is cholelithiasis, because there is an inflammation of the gallbladder, inflammation of the likely inflammation of the pancreas. And if this pain, or if this infection further moves on into the hepatic ducts and into the liver, we call it as cholangitis. So it is important to understand where the patient is. If the patient is having just cholecystitis or choledocholithiasis or cholangitis. The best way to differentiate them is from the fact that when there is cholecystitis, you definitely find that white blood cell count is high. There's no doubt about that. And when there is a patient is having choledocholithiasis, where there is a assumption that some amount of bile has regurgitated into the pancreatic duct and is threatening to cause acute pancreatitis, there is a surge of rise of serum lipase. And if we can watch a patient, the only investigation that we can do at that point of time is serum lipase, complete blood picture that will confirm whether the patient has choledocholithiasis or not. And if the patient has inflammatory markers that are raised even in the liver function test, the SGOT and the SGPT, then you can safely assume that the patient is having cholangitis and the inflammation is right along the common bile duct, and it is a very difficult situation, and you have to watch him very closely to see that you don't give him the wrong advice at any point of time. So taking further, the ultrasound scan, we all know, will always show where the stones are. If it is the neck of the gallbladder or the bile duct or bile duct, it very important to understand. And if the blockage is there, then definitely there will be a rise in the alkaline phosphatase levels also in the liver function test. Then you can assume that it is because of the most likely it is because of the stone, because sometimes ultrasounds can miss a calculus in along the lining of the course of this duct, which opens into through the duct of Oddi into the duodenum. So along this line, if there is a blockage, the alkaline phosphatase numbers will definitely tell you that you are in a safe zone or otherwise. So is the surgery inevitable? So let us understand whether we need to take this ball, face this ball, or leave it alone and wait for the next ball to come. Is it so, or you have to go for it anyway? So when the patient is having a gangrenous cholecystitis, when there is pericholecystic edema, the sign of gangrenous cholecystitis is pericholecystic edema, the white blood cell count being more than 18,000. And when there is a threatening perforation with peritonitis, also you have this condition. And usually what patients have to undergo before a bariatric surgery is a cholecystectomy, because they say when there is a clamping of the stomach, the amount of bile that is required for the digestion of fats is going to be less. And if there is a continuous flow, and when there is not enough requisitioning of the bile juice from the gallbladder, there is going to be accumulation in the days to come, and it could lead to cholecystitis. That is why they say for bariatric surgery, the patient should go for a cholecystectomy, and we should allow them to do so. And also before a cardiac transplant, which are the likelihood of such cases coming to us is not many. When the thickness of the gallbladder wall is 4 millimeters, they say that you have to see that the patient needs surgery, but our job is to see that it comes down below 4 millimeters in the days to come. I will try to present also a couple of cases where it has happened and the patients have been living with their secreting gallbladders for more than years now, that after this particular cholecystitis condition. And also the other reversal that we need to see that is when the gallbladder does not exceed the size of 5 centimeters. And any surgeon worth his salt would only say when the thickness of the wall of the gallbladder is more than 4 millimeters, or the whole size of the gallbladder is 5 centimeters, and only when there is contraction of the gallbladder and when there is a calculus stuck during the course of the bile duct, only then they would need to say that the patient needs to undergo cholecystectomy. And the last three things, like the thickness of the gallbladder, the size of the gallbladder, and the contraction of the gallbladder, comes very much under the purview of our system of medicine. And we have our task cut out here to go ahead and do this job. And why is it that it's a big drama that we say that the patient, we can avoid the patient from going for a surgery? There is enough evidence in these, science research articles where they say that 40% of the patients who have undergone surgery, cholecystectomy, continue to have the symptoms of cholecystitis later also. So is it necessary that the patient needs to undergo is a question that we need to ask. And of course, we need to understand our limitations and play the game accordingly. And we have also understood that there is a higher likelihood of adenocarcinoma in patients who have undergone cholecystectomy because there is a continuous flow of the bile from the hepatic ducts because the gallbladder has been removed and there is no reservoir for the bile juice to stay. And this continuous secretion of the bile into the second part of the stomach, into the duodenum, can always cause a reflux. And according to a journal published in journal Nature that has carries this research article, you can go through that. They will say that the patient has a higher risk. So of course, understanding the risk of the patient is necessary, and the game that we have on hand and the limitations that we have on hand is absolutely necessary to understand where to take the game from. And a lot of patients come back and ask us what is the best diet to see that the gallbladder stone remains silent and doesn't cause any trouble. And I, for one, let me also be honest, and I should have taken an oath on the Bhagavad Gita before I started this session with Dr. B.D. Patel ji, saying that whatever जो भी कहूँगा सच कहूँगा और सच के सिवा कुछ नहीं कहूँगा, क्योंकि the presentations of homeopathic journals, according to my young friends who have rolled out of colleges recently, they say their experience that is that when they go into the arena and bowl the ball, it doesn't take that spin that actually takes on the beautiful screens that are presented in the homeopathic sessions. So it is imperative on my part to stick to that line and share with you what I do and what I honestly do, and not staying away from that path. So coming back to the diet, let us understand that Mediterranean diet is the best diet for all these conditions, and for that matter, the civilization of today. What is Mediterranean diet? So anything which contains a reduced amount of carbohydrates, but a rich amount of proteins and a reasonable amount of fats, and fats that come from the oils. Say, for example, the olive oil and the rice bran oil, they say, are the best oils because they do not have much of constituents that are not broken down by our mechanism. And what happens is when they are not broken down properly, they go and get deposited in our liver, and our liver, which is non-complaining, as we always know, promptly just keeps getting increased in size, causing fatty liver. And NASH is a condition that we know is a non-alcoholic steatotic hepatitis, is a condition where, in spite of not taking alcohol, you are abusing your liver to a great extent. So having a good amount of avocados or peppers, whether the bright red, yellow, red or green, whichever you walk into a supermarket and you find them the most colorful from the refrigerator, you carry them, you're very unlikely to get conditions related to this problem, cholecystitis, that we are discussing today. So the differential diagnosis, as we enter into the patient's arena, gastritis will have a patient having pain more into the pit of the stomach, peptic ulcer also into the dorsal region, pain associated, and pancreatitis again in the pit of the stomach. And you will find the serum lipase levels, the acute marker of pancreatitis, which will be increased, and pyelonephritis, of course, the patient would be having other symptoms like dysuria, or even without that, or an increased creatinine temporarily, or an increased white blood cell count, which we need to differentiate from this condition. And of course, myocardial infarction, where we can see that apart from the troponin levels can be high, and we know our pneumonia, and that we have seen enough in 2020 and 2021 that the incidence has been high. So once we are sure about our differential diagnosis and we move on, the first playing ground which needs to take the charge against the batsman, we decide on the miasm, or I will put it the other way. In fact, if the bowler is right, whichever the miasm may be, the medicine is going to act, because it's not necessary that sometimes we stick to that, but let us understand the miasmatic process, how it really leads to this condition. And we are aware of SORA, which is the root of all causes, but psychosis mostly because of the gallbladder stones. We are talking about the excessive accumulation, like of the cholesterol, the sand and the stones in the gallbladder, the sludge in the gallbladder, and on the emotional level, the amount of stress that we need to undergo in this civilization, in this society that we have, that there is always an underlying psychosis, one-upmanship that we need to have to live in this world. So having said that, the SORA will raise its hood as and when there is a issue, and the subacute form of cholecystitis could come up. So these are the two miasms that we need to consider as we also consider our prescription. So actually, there is no end to the materia medica of cholecystitis, but I would run through what actually are usually remedies, but I'm going to share 4 cases that of cholecystitis that may help to reach out to you about my method to my madness or prescription of cholecystitis. So we know that when there is an ensuing fever and the patient continues to vomit and all the stomach contents are gone by, but still the retching does not stop, then it has to be belladonna. And Berberis vulgaris, as Farrington says, is a remedy when the patient has both tendency for formation of stone, whether it is the kidney or the gallbladder. And my first choice of remedies will be Bryonia, because it is obvious that generally the pain is worse after eating, the patient has vomiting, the patient has the pain is there in the right upper quadrant radiating to the back, and the patient has flatulent distension of abdomen. And let me also frankly tell you that I practice predictable homeopathy, in the sense that like Bryonia for right side, Laxasis for left side, Spigelia for left side, there's nothing special about it, but how we apply and how we got the prognosis is what I would like to share with my friends, rather than any school of thought, I would like to say. And that in all counts, because as long as Dr. B.D. Patelji was just saying, it really doesn't matter as long as the patient is getting better. What are the remedies? But of course, we need to have a logic as to why we do it and what we do. That's the only thing I would like to share with you. And the second remedy that will come high on my repertoire for the arsenal of remedies that we have cholecystitis would be Diascorea, because as Boric says, if there are so many polycrests like Lycopodium or Nux vomica or Lachesis or whatever, when it comes to Diascorea for the gallstone disease or the gallbladder diseases, it has to be ranked amongst the polycrests of materia medica, and the patient has a weak digestion and a gallstone colic. And we have our constitutional homeopaths who have done a great study, who have all through the couple of centuries understood the mechanism of the action of the vital force in warding out illness or subduing an illness. And we have them in talking great reams and pages about how the constitutional remedies can work. But let us not forget the fact that these are the great people who didn't shudder or didn't blink an eyelid when they have to say that even this polycrest can be used in an acute condition, as Dr. Hughes says that for gallstone colic, for the first 3 hours, he is going to try only calcarea carb, irrespective of whatever are the symptoms that the patient is going to have. And later, only when it doesn't act, that is going to think about the next remedy. So as we are all aware about the symptoms of calcarea carb, and actually the fat, female 40, flatulent, probably all fall into the umbrella of calcarea carb, and the slow digestion that it has doesn't disappoint a homeopath. And then we have colocynth, which is better by bending double, which is better by warmth, and which has a tendency for urge to pass stool after eating or drinking. And when it comes to the chronic cholecystitis form, we understand that colocynth falls under the angry and choleric temperament, the psychotic temperament of the day. And this is a beautiful remedy, whether in acute or chronic phase, that we need to consider as the symptoms go by. Having said that, we were talking about the condition where there is pericholecystic edema, where there is an increased white blood cell count, the neutrophil count, absolute neutrophil count is very much increased, the lymphocyte count is reduced, telling you very clearly that it is a bacterial infection. Maybe it is a recurrent typhoid that the patient is having over a period of time, that he has reached a condition of acute cholecystitis. Maybe it is the Clostridium bacteria that the patient has reached this stage. But whatever it is, when you see that there is an infection, don't think twice, just think about Baptisia and Pyrogenum. We all know the symptoms of Baptisia, the offensive secretion and the thirstlessness and whatever. But my first point about Baptisia would be, look at the complete blood picture. If the neutrophil count is high and white blood cell count is beyond 17,000, 24 hours, you give Baptisia and Pyrogenum a chance to, like Dr. Srinivas Luji and me, to bat together. And 24 hours, we'll show you the result if it goes by. Or if it doesn't, we have no shyness in saying that we hand it over to our friend, the surgeon, to take care of the condition. But it doesn't necessarily happen that way. More often than not, we have an opening partnership that will see us this condition through. The Baptisia and the Pyrogenum, don't think twice when there is a high evidence of infection. And like Baptisia, if there is thirstlessness, you think about Gelsemium. But this is not the first remedy that I'm going to think about in acute cholecystitis, unless the patient has severe thirstlessness, and just find out from him whether it is because of the vomiting and the retching that he's scared of even having a sip of water, that he's saying that he's not drinking water, or because he's thirstless that he's not drinking any water. So just have a pointed question about that. There's nothing wrong in an acute condition to understand that, because he will be in a threatening mood at that point of time, and just because his restlessness is pointing to an angry and choleric temperament doesn't mean that he is of a cholecyn temperament and rush to that remedy. So we have safer and tested remedies like Baptisia and Pyrogenum, which can do the job. And not to forget the fact that once you have seen that in 24 to 48 hours, the WBC has come down to an extent, but not to an extent where there is the patient is out of the woods, say from 17,000 to it has come down to 13,000, it doesn't mean the patient is in a safe zone. And that is a time when we have to think of mercurius. Mercurius is a very labile remedy, or a labile chemical, as we all know, and very agile and a very restless remedy, which is going to, reach the area of Mahabharat to strike rich and give us dividends in subduing the infection. So the Kurukshetra, Mercurius likes, and we need to allow it that field to take over as and when the time is right. And also we have spoken about cholangitis, where already the ascending infection has reached the hepatic zone. There is a increase in the levels of SGOT and SGPT, and so you have to understand that there is a threatening pancreatitis, the cholecystitis already is there, and cholangitis has also set. Is the remedy that deserves at least 24 hours to see whether it can bring down the infection. And now let us move on to the deep acting remedies for cholecystitis. And then we have Lycopodium, the right-sided one. The appetite is good in spite of having so much of the recurrent episodes of subacute or say acute cholecystitis. The patient continues to have a good appetite and is not shy of eating. And but in spite of the weak digestion, he's not reluctant to eating. So another remedy that falls under a similar umbrella is antimonium crudum, which we need not shy away from giving at any point of time. And I think if I am asked to choose one remedy, one deep acting remedy for cholecystitis, chronic cholecystitis, I will say it has to be Sepia, because as we discussed at the beginning of our session when I started to speak, the congestion which is going to lead to the stagnation and the stasis and the inflammation, that is the reason whether it is acute acalculous cholecystitis or whether the chronic cholecystitis, without having stasis, there is no chance that this condition is going to come. So stasis is a remedy, as we all are aware. The venous congestion, the portal hypertension that we have in this particular remedy, in the deep acting remedy, is Sepia, and it needs a fair chance to work, and give it a month or so. In repeated doses, the dosage and the potency is everybody's choice. And we all need to have develop our own this thing, or here to a learned gentlemen like Dr. Shripad Hegdeji, who can guide us on such things, give their view on those. And Sepia is also a remedy, as they say today. Sitting is the new smoking is an adage that we find everywhere. So even if the person is not smoking, if he's sitting for hours long at his occupation, like us, that we do in our clinics, Sepia is a remedy that we need to take probably once in a while. And another remedy which can fall into acalculous cholecystitis and into chronic cholecystitis is a remedy like Silesia. Silesia is a remedy which is also on the pathological basis. You can see that there is a good radiologist will find out that there is a scarring of the inner lining of the gallbladder. There is a fibrosis or the thickening of the wall of the gallbladder. And it is also a remedy, as we know, for adhesions. So strictures, it's a beautiful remedy, and let us not forget that after Sepia plays its job, and the best remedy to increase the run rate or take it stable from forwards after Sepia does is Silesia, because it's a beautiful complementary remedy to Silesia. And if Sepia you think is working, Silesia is only waiting around the corner. And if you have all the symptoms of Sepia, and if you have a woman who is at the climacteric, as we have just discussed about the fat flatulent and the female individuals who are more prone to this condition, and if along with all the symptoms of Sepia, if the patient also has a hemorrhagic diathesis, don't think twice about lachesis. And our friends who are more interested in working on the life space and the emotional balance of an individual will also find that a lachesis patient who has been with you or whose family has been with you for a long time and has been tasted the good prescriptions of yours continues to have suspicion. So probably you can think about lachesis in those conditions. And let me again submit to you honestly that I will never start treating a case of a gastrointestinal system, at least in the chronic phase, without starting with a dose of Nux vomica, because it is a remedy for today's civilization. And also, as we know, the sphere of action of this remedy, the gastrointestinal system, and the stress and the anger and the bottled up emotions incident to the modern life, and the amount of toxins that we imbibe through our day-to-day foods, I think there can be no remedy better than Nux vomica to start the game. And I think if you need a night watchman and I'm out and Dr. Srinivaslu does not want to face the barrage and he wants another batsman at the end of the day, I think you can have a remedy like Nux vomica, which can threaten deeply into the bowling defenses of your opposing team. At the same time, protect you for the night to come as a night watchman. I think Nux vomica is a beautiful remedy you give at the end of the day. And when you start the day, it has to be then naturally sulfur. So Nux at night and sulfur in the morning are beautiful antisorics which are going to stand by you. And if you have a patient who is likely to have recurrent episodes of cholecystitis, sulfur is a remedy which you cannot forget. And not to forget the fact that sulfur is a remedy to subdue. All the same, having said that, our challenge in treating a case of chronic cholecystitis is that the patient does not require surgery. Is if you go to a surgeon and ask him, a surgeon friend, and ask him if he's worth his salt, as we always say, he's going to say if the patient has asymptomatic gallstones, which he has over a period of 1 year, and the last attack of cholecystitis was over a year ago, then he's not going to invite him to his table for surgery. So our challenge is to see that for one calendar year, say 2022, the 2nd of Jan we start, and we see to it the last Sunday of this year, then patient does not develop cholecystitis, that we have won the war of chronic cholecystitis. So phosphorus is my favorite remedy for any chronic condition, and for chronic cholecystitis, it's a remedy that has its wide range of action, whether it is a circulatory system, whether it is a gastrointestinal system, whether it is a emotional phase of the mind. And more importantly, not to forget that in this area of the sphere of action that we are discussing this afternoon, the first Sunday of 2022, it has to be the pancreas. If there is one remedy in our materia medica that stands by pancreas, it has to be phosphorus. And a few doses of phosphorus intermittently, whether the remedy fits in the picture of the symptoms of the patient or not, please don't hesitate to give them. It is going to stand by you and the patient a long way. And my favorite about therapeutics is, I have to admit, is the French homeopaths who don't go by the rule book, and unlike their German cousins, Forter and Bernaville, they have written a beautiful book which you can find on Beijing Publisher website, I believe. I bought it from there. And thank you. I enjoyed reading that book, and have been using their advices over a period of time, where they don't hesitate to use any number of remedies at any point of time to strike over that particular challenge. So we are here to drain the gallbladder out of its bile promptly all the time. So for that we need these remedies. Drain as they call, fourth-year bed habit. Yeah, there can be no better master of materia medica than James Tyler Kent. And he was the one who speaks highly of any constitutional remedies. But we always forget the fact that many a time he has spoken about specific remedies. He has spoken about pathological prescriptions. Being a physician of modern medicine at that point of time, mainstream medicine, if I correct myself. Because he says his first remedy for gallbladder stones would be natrum sulph, which helps in acting on the circular fibers of the gallbladder wall and promptly empties the bile. So let us not be shy of the fact that we have to choose a remedy only on the emotional sphere or the mind or the life space. We have enough remedies in our materia medica to tide over any amount of crisis, even when you don't find a proper constitutional remedy for that point of time. And having said that, our constitution of homeopathy gives us the leverage to, go for any kind of prescription, whether it is pathological, whether it is constitutional, whether it is whatever it is. The fact of the matter remains that the patient has to go through that crisis and see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think for that, we need to appreciate our founder, Dr. Hahnemann, who has been able to guide us that way. And till today, whatever the science may say, homeopathy lives because it has its under arsenal the wide range of not only the remedies, but the way they act. And we always feel proud that, suddenly I have given this remedy and it acts. But the fact of the matter is, you give it for some symptom and it works for something else because its sphere of action is something else. So we need not be shy of doing anything as far as the patient is out of the crisis. And apart from bryonia and Diascorea, my first prescription will have to be China, because China is a remedy which promptly relieves or flows out the bile of the gallbladder as swiftly as possible. And it is also a remedy for patients who are recovering from an acute illness. And as we just discussed in acalculous cholecystitis, a patient who is suffering from other illness and who is admitted finds to develop this acute cholecystitis, and he has that colic. So in such patients, or even otherwise, when there is an infection, to promptly drain out the bile, my top 4 remedies are bryonia, Diascorea, China, and Calcarea carb, as Hughes would say. And then we have just discussed about pericholecystic edema, where it is an evidence of the fact that the secondary infection is setting in. And mind you, this sentences are not mine, and which I generously copy from our masters. And like, for example, Dr. B.D. Patelji had visited our association and said, for tuberculosis of the spine and where there is a fistula in ano, if you are not giving a remedy of Calcarea phos, you are doing a huge mistake. And it's been more than 3 years that I've heard him say that. I have not forgotten him, and promptly that comes to my mind. So you be a good copier like Xerox or the photocopy. There's nothing wrong as far as homeopathy is concerned. It is only going to help your patients. So when it is pericholecystic edema and hepatic diseases due to excessive intake of alcohol, and especially in chronic cholecystitis, when the acute is coming down and it is entering into the chronic phase, you can always think about the lower potencies of Cardias marianus or mother tincture. And same too about Chelidonium. There is nothing much different here. And the beauty of Chelidonium is it has its wide range of action, and it can go in and play a test match, and it can go in and play a 20-20 like Shardul Thakur is, whether you want him to bowl or bat in any form of the game, chelidonium is always there. But I employ it mostly when in acute forms in the higher potencies or the centesimal potencies like the 30 or the 200, and 6E and mother tinctures, especially in the chronic phase. And Chionanthus, as we all know, is a remedy for hepatitis. And see, the Boric wrote this lines more than 100 years ago, and he says it's a liver remedy for the gallbladder stones and pancreatic disease. Isn't it a fact that and we have just discussed that the common bile duct is blocked and it causes pancreatitis and ensuing cholangitis. So it's a beautiful remedy for that sphere, and we should not be shy of using that, especially in the chronic phase. And I do it usually in the mother tincture form. And I've not used this remedy much, but it's a remedy, as they say, to drain out the bile. The Porter and Bernaville textbook of liver and drainage, liver and biliary tract remedy says that it's a remedy which you can employ when the patient also has diarrhea. So cholesterol also in the lower potencies we can use. And let's not forget the fact that the bile concentrate that it is causing this stagnation and the stasis and the stagnation is also because of the cholesterol pigment that has increased in this area. And cholesterol is a beautiful remedy to weed out and wean out the cholesterol from the gallbladder. And I have a fad of using lower potencies of whether it is a no soda sarcode, for example. Sometimes sarcode like insulin or pancreatin or cholesterol, when there is a generous amount of those enzymes or hormones in our blood circulation, and our body is not utilizing them, like the thyroidinum also, and they work like magic. And this is what I've learned from Dr. Kopikar's 70 years of clinical experience, where he talks on this particular lines of using lower potencies for such an area. And I've enjoyed using those. For example, a young girl with PCOS and who is fat and flabby and has a dark discoloration around the neck, and who has higher insulin levels. On examination, lab investigations, you give her insulin 6C. Apart from whatever remedies you're going to give her, she'll not only have a normal period, but have insulin, serial insulin dropping down and doing its action where it needs to. So I'm sorry to digress away for a moment, but cholesterol 6C is a remedy which we can always employ in the chronic cholestatic phase. So as we cross acute cholecystitis, there are a few things which we need to address, like the sludge that is there in the gallbladder, which can always precipitate a condition of acute cholecystitis again. And that is the reason why we need to see that it is promptly drained out, and that is definitely one. And hydrast is where I usually employ where the appetite is less, or where there is retching and vomiting that has drained the patient out, but usually not much. And patients do not want to have their gallbladders showing that there is a stone after using homeopathic medicine. And I promptly say that I cannot promise you that. If you want to take homeopathic medicine, I cannot do a condition wherein you are, shunned of the stones. I'm sorry, I cannot do that. If you want to see that the stones remain silent and do not cause any biliary colic in the days to come, I can that lifestyle change and you stick to medication for a while of time. And what's our Boric promises a little more than that. And as they say, Feltori in a lower potencies is a remedy that can liquefy bile, and it is a good purgative and a cholagogue, and is very likely to improve the duodenal secretions also, apart from emulsifying the fats, whether it is in the intestines or in the gallbladder, to shun out those stones. which usually I swear I do not promise. And my top remedies for colic could be China, Calcareca, Bryonia, and Diascoria. And once the patient is out of that condition of acute cholecystitis, I move on to natrum sulfin, centesimal potencies, and Cardas marianus, Chionanthus, and Hydrastis in either lower potencies or the mother tincture form. Intercurrent, I don't think twice to give medorinum and tuberculinum. Tuberculinum, we have patients of NASH or we have patients who are lean, thin, and tall, who do not seem to have much of weight on their bodies. But when you do an ultrasound scan, our general radiologist always says that they have a grade 1 or a 2 fatty, and it's a remedy you can employ in those conditions. And medorinum, as it says, the psychotic miasm that it represents, there should not be any marks for guessing. And let me give you a few cases in about 5 minutes. I can close, sir, Dr. B.D. Patel, sir, give me a few minutes. This is a patient, one Mr. VSP, who found out that he's having a gallbladder stone. Of course, it was distended 23 into 13 millimeter size. It really doesn't matter to us as the size of the gallbladder. As a matter of fact, I would say at only if it is very fine, there's a threat that it could come out and out of the neck of the gallbladder and it can block. And whether the bigger it is less likely to cause you any trouble in the long run. Of course, let us not be forget the fact that it can cause chronic cholecystitis, because it can cause the irritation of the lining of the inner lining of the gallbladder. But definitely the smaller stones have a bigger threat. And the wall of the gallbladder was 9.7 millimeters, and there was varicocystic edema. I'm sorry, wrong. I mean, the mistakes in typing, I just picked it out from my, my case management system, and I usually type this looking at the patient. So some amount of mistakes while typing, I'm sure you should forgive me. Thank you for that. So after the 4th of July, we did the scan on the 6th of July, only 2 days later, to find that the gallbladder was distended and there was no wall thickening. The 9.7 millimeters had come down to normal. The calculus could be, and there was sludge noted. That means there is the patient is moving from an acute stage back into the chronic stage, and the ESR was high, the WBC was 10,000. So we need to keep a watch on this patient for a while. And I checked his lipase just to see that he has not developed pancreatitis. It was in the safe zone of 49. Sorry. Yeah, and a week later, we repeated the scan. The stones were there as usual. There was no pericholecystic edema, and there was no gallbladder wall thickness. So we can be rest assured that the patient is going to be fine in the days to come. He has been under the constant guidance of his daughter, a physician of internal medicine, and she said, you need to go for cholecystectomy right away. But being our old patient, she also gave us some time. And the fact of the matter is, the good thing about American homeopaths or the American system of medicine is that by the time the patient gets a surgery date announced, probably in the next 2 or 3 months, we have enough time to see that the patient is out of all this crisis and the stones remain silent, and is saved of a procedure. And so much thanks to the American medical system, especially from the homeopaths. Sorry. Yeah, this is a patient, Yadgiri, whom we saw about a year ago. And he had a white blood cell count of 12,000. ESR was 28. Bilirubin was fine. It was more than 0.1. So the SGPT and SGOT were raised. That means the patient is having cholangitis. the amylase, look at the amylase and lipase 1948, where 60, more than 60 is high. So the lipase is standing at 2791, where the norm is 60. And the ultrasound scan shows a thickness of 4.5 millimeters, which is high. There's a calculus measuring 7 millimeters and a mild starch. The patient underwent a endoscopy, which was normal apart from a residue. And 22nd to 25th October, it so happened that this gentleman happened to do this test under the guidance of a specialist on a Saturday, and he was slated to undergo the procedure ERCP on Monday. So because their hospital is closed on Sunday, we got that window of opportunity to give our Bryonia, Diascorea, China, and Calcarea carb. And in a matter of, by the time he went to specialty, when he wanted to undergo the procedure, there was no stone in the gallbladder. Of course, we don't take the credit in saying that our homeopathic remedies have gotten rid of the calculus from the common bile duct. I would only say that number one. The number two, that we can definitely take credit as homeopaths for our remedies, is that the prompt emptying of the bile has definitely happened because of our remedies, not just by releasing of the blockage. Because the other system of medicines have something to probably pluck out a calculus, but they do not have any remedy that can cause or improve the contraction of the gallbladder. So that credit should go to us, our system of medicine. And 2791 of lipase has gone to 75 in probably 14 days. And this is a lady of 81 years. Thank God to COVID, we got to see a number of COVID cases. And we also saw that the hospitals were taking patients only on an emergency or where it was only warranted. And some found that treating COVID patients was better, or giving up the facility of the surgeons and giving it to the physicians to train or to help the COVID patients who are of the utmost necessity. And in the September of 2020, we found this had colitis. And you look at the white blood cell count of 17,900, and the neutrophil count was 84, lymphocytes were 10, and the CRP, C-reactive protein, standing at 100, and lipase threatening to cause pancreatitis more than 60 at 396. And in 5 days, the lipase has come down to normal. The amylase, which is a marker of chronic inflammation of the pancreas, was normal anyway. So the white blood cell count, which denotes that the infection had come down to 6070 in a matter of 5 days. And this is another case. So this was a patient with whom we saw only the last week of 2021, which we closed down on a high, thanks to one of such patients. So this patient recently underwent a surgery in September for intersusception, and had to rush to the emergency again because of a pain abdomen. And he was showed to have an edematous pancreatitis with alkaline phosphatase of 220 and 244, and white blood cell count standing at 12,500. He was admitted for 3 or 4 days. And when he was admitted, to be honest, it was about 19,000. And his son called up and said, they are suggesting surgery at the end of 1 week. Do we undergo that? I said, I will not promise you anything, but just let me know what the white blood cell count is. When he was admitted, it was more than 18,000. And when on the third day of admission, it was 12,500 when he was discharged, and the medicine was picked up from our clinic. And gave the same remedies apart from Bryonia, Diascorea, China, and Calcarea carb. We also gave Iris versicolor and Belladonna as repertory, my favorite repertory, which says that for acute pancreatitis, the best remedies are Belladonna, Conium, and Iris versicolor, and I gave them unhesitatingly. And the numbers dropped down in a matter of 3 or 4 days to what you can see, the WBC from 12,500 to 5,300, and alkaline phosphatase from 220 to 128, the normal zone, and the SGOT, I'm sorry, the SGOT is typed wrongly. I'm not sure, I can check my record and tell you. And the lipase definitely decreased, but there is definitely still a threat the patient can develop this problem, because as long as the lipase is down, you cannot rest easy. So until it comes below 60, we need to take guard and be careful. And this is my experience in cholecystitis, treatment of cholecystitis. And I enjoy treating these patients because, as I said earlier, the best you do for chronic cases, the patient will come and say that it has been helped because of yoga or something else or some lifestyle change. But acute things, definitely the credit will go to our system of medicine. And the reason why we could see a significant number of COVID cases in our clinics, along with my young associates this season, was because of the fact that we have always treated fevers. And when it was COVID fever also, patients did not forget us. So probably this is our Kurukshetra, which we like to be in. And I hand it over to my patron, Dr. B.D. Patel and the rest of the team, and giving me an opportunity to talk on this occasion. I also thank Dr. Sanjay Panikar for good words about me at the beginning of this session. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for a detailed and wonderful study on cholecystitis.
Sounded Lisa.
Okay, you can unshare these slides. No
Yes,
problem. Sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful and vivid presentation. Okay. Dr. Trupti, if there is any questions you can take up.
Sure, sir.
Huh?
We have, yes, sir. We have a question.
Excuse me.
1 minute. I'll ask.
Yes, Dr.
Okay,
Renuka.
Dr. Renuka, you ask. Then I'll go with the next.
Sir, at what stage, at what calculus is at what size we should go for tests? Sir said that test we had to go for all WBC, SGOT, SGPT. All this, at what size of the calculus we should go for tests, sir? Generally, for up to 13 mm, we will treat with our medicines, sir, without surgery. But at what size we should go for tests, sir?
Really doesn't matter, ma'am. If it is a chronic cholecystitis, just do a CBP and see where we stand. And if he's having acute symptoms, I would suggest that first line go for complete blood picture, liver function test, serum lipase, and sometimes also and another thing I would like to generally do is the C-reactive protein, which is a very sharp marker for inflammation. So if it is raised, then we can understand that there is a threat of this chronic cholecystitis turning into acute cholecystitis. And if there are no symptoms after ensuing of our treatment, I don't think we need to do any investigations. And as such, we don't promise that we are going to dissolve any gallstones. We only promise that we can see that they don't trouble you in the days to come. That's a good enough promise if they can take and be under our care, ma'am.
Right now, I'm having 3 cases of gallstones, sir. I'm treating those cases, but your wonderful and enlightening lecture has showed the way, sir. I have some doubts. What is the acalculous cholecystitis, sir?
Thank you, Dr. Renuka. But acalculous, as we can say, is, the gallstone probably it has flowed out, or the sludge is remaining in the gallbladder, and the gallbladder is not able to promptly empty the bile. So that is a condition where you can call it as acalculous cholecystitis. And in this
Okay.
condition also, we'll see that the infection is more and we can address promptly. And we should promptly think about remedies like cholestyrinum, Diascoria, and China in lower potencies. And in the long run, I'm saying,
Yes, yes.
and China more importantly.
Whenever we
And
get recurrent attacks of, you said that sulfur and phosphorus will help a lot, sir. Some any other mother tincture, sir, at that time? Recurrent attacks of pain.
Chelidonium and Cardes marianus are the beautiful mother tinctures that can drain the bile.
Okay, okay. Sir, coming to the diet, some of the people are telling that boiled apples will help to drain the gallstones. Is it right, sir?
Apple cider vinegar, they say, but that's not on the top of my list, ma'am. I will work more in that direction in the days to come.
Okay, coming to the adenocarcinoma of the stomach after removing the gallbladder, what we had to do, sir? What we had to go through the medicines?
No, that generally I don't enjoy treating that. I honestly say that we use that only as our system of medicine as complementary medicine. But maybe for ornithogallum is a beautiful remedy that can subdue any pain of cancer, especially the abdominal ones. And you can give a lot of relief, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Renuka. So we have one question that how to handle cases of gallstones when there are no symptoms of gallstone but patient has PCOD.
Yeah, incidentally, the reason why we come across more patients of gallstones today is because there is not much of a difference of cost between doing an ultrasound scan pelvis and an ultrasound scan abdomen. So unwittingly or incidentally, when a woman is undergoing an ultrasound scan pelvis for a gynec condition, because the cost is not much of a difference, they also undergo an ultrasound scan abdomen as a whole, and they find that incidentally they also have gallstones. Just because you find a gallstone doesn't mean that they need to be of any threat. Just need to reassure your patient that they can be no problem with that. But we can always see whether they have any gastritis like symptoms like bloating, belching, sour water coming into the mouth, or the upper GI symptoms or reflux like symptoms. If there are, we need to address the patient. Otherwise, we can just say that forget it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello.
There is
Hello, madam, can I
yes,
ask now?
Yes, Padmaja.
Yeah. Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Dr. Venu, sir, as usual, you are rocking the webinar today. Thank you so much for that vast details you have given. So what only two questions, sir. Recently I'm facing problem with these sludge cases, sir. Many at times I'm facing these sludge cases are more than the calculus. So in a case, it's like this, sir. The girl, the woman had got a very acute gallstone colic during her pregnancy, and she has been treated for that. And after that, she got all sludge. Then this happened some few years back, but now the surgeon has telling that no, the sludge is there. I need to remove the gallbladder like that. Then she approached me. So I thought that there are no symptoms, no particular acute symptoms. So I started treating her constitutionally. So what is this sludge? So could you please throw some more light on that one, sir? And the other one is this one is regarding silesia. You have told a beautiful point of scarring and internal fibrosis lining of the gallbladder. So recently I happened to treat a case of a scalloping of the duodenum who came for a gallstones colic, but she instantly has this scalloping of the duodenum also. So by constitutionally taking, I have given her the silesia. So the scalloping has come down and the gallstones are the gallstone colic has come down, and she is very much better with her gluten allergy and everything. So I thought that silesia had acted her constitutionally because she is a silesia patient constitutionally. But now I came to know that pathology which you have explained. So thank you so much for that, sir. Just please give a little more symptoms for this sludge, sir. So what is that? Can
Dr. Padmaja, I will say it's a good question because I can answer it. Because as I said, during pregnancy, the increased levels of progesterone actually slows down the contractions of the gallbladder. And you see a number of women who are in this cholestasis condition, and you need to have good friends of gynecologists, to see that you get a good number of those cases. And as you are aware, during pregnancy, the last thing the surgeon wants to do is a cholecystectomy. So, and when you can promise that a prompt emptying of the bile can be done with our remedies, and you show that on your condition in your reports, the gynecologist will refer you more and more cases. And honestly, that they are the reason why I have seen a number of pregnant women with cholestasis. And in such women, what I do is generally I give progesterone 1 mg also in the chronic phase. As I just told you, to utilize what is more in the body well in a lower potencies, it will help. But to see that the action of that particular enzyme or hormone is limited, the same remedy, when we talk about a sarcode here, in a higher potency, it corrects its action. So that's the beauty of homeopathy, the potencies of homeopathy, and it will never disappoint us. So cholestasis in pregnant women, we can also identify because such women also have pleuritis.
फेसबुक पेज और इंस्टाग्राम पर भी फॉलो कर। मगर ये बात बहुत कम लोगों को पता है कि राज साहब के लिए किशोर दानी भी एक फिल्म।
Sir, you seem to be playing a good song, B.D. Patel, sir.
Sir, we have a next question. I think that should be the last one. That Dr. Reena is asking, so can we cure gallstones or dissolve the gallstones when there are no symptoms?
Why should we promise that at all, ma'am? That's not our cup of tea. And asymptomatic gallstone is the need of the hour. 1 year you see, 1 calendar year you see that the patient does not develop acute cholecystitis, you have done your job. Of course, they say colestrinum and Feltori, Diascorea and China and even Chelidonium are good remedies sometimes to dissolve gallstones, but I never promise a patient that, and I would not enjoy treating that, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Swami, sir, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful explanation. And I call upon Dr. Chirant to give the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to take this wonderful opportunity to thank the speakers of the day today. The first speaker, Dr. Srinivasalu, sir, who is our lifetime treasure of this association, who has wonderfully presented so many cases with the documents, evidences, and he has given a great spectrum of remedies also, and wide varieties of cases also he has shown, which will definitely give an insight to all the beginners who are focusing on the pathological prescription side. Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful presentation. I'd like to thank the second speaker of the day, Dr. Venugopal Gauri also, who has given a detailed description about the cholecystitis and a broad spectrum of remedies which are covering this. Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful presentation. I'd like to thank our patron, Dr. B.D. Patelji, for inaugurating the session with a positive vibration of Shankunadam and also releasing the Homeo Sandesh magazine. Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to thank our chairman, Dr. Swami, sir, H.L. Swami, sir, for wonderfully moderating this session of the day. Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to thank Dr. Shripad Hegdeji, who is the president of KQHDA, who is the backbone in bringing up this magazine, KQHDA Homeo Sandesh. And because of him, so many positive things are happening with our association now. Thank you very much, sir. And I would also like to thank all the members of the editorial board of Homeo Sandesh magazine, Dr. Trupti Pai, Dr. Lata Devarajan, Dr. Amit Rolli, and Dr. Anusha Kulkarni, who have done a tremendous work in the background and who are responsible for the successful launching of the 4th issue of Homeo Sandesh magazine. Thank you very much, doctors. I'd like to thank Dr. Sanjay Panikar for introducing today's speakers. I would like to thank Dr. Shubha for doing her welcome speech. I'd like to thank Dr. Trupti for moderating and coordinating this session with all the technical aspects. Thank you, Doctor. And I would like to thank all the participants from throughout the nation who have attended today's session. Thank you all. And if you have not become the member of KQHDA, then here is an opportunity for you to become the member of KQHDA. You also can access all the magazines and various other articles in our website, www.kqhda.com. In a day or two, today's magazine will also be published there. Please follow us on the Facebook page, kqhda.india, and meet you all in the next month's CME. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Chirant. There are some mistake from my side. There is a blunder. There was, Sir Patel, sir, you have to conclude the session, sir.
When Chirant can do so wonderfully well, what can do? Anyhow, I was feeling that I was sitting in a 4th year therapeutics class when Dr. Venugopal was talking. Very clear, very specific, very clear. But another one point is that whenever you call Dr. Venugopal, you will get a lot of other people to join our webinar. So you can do that next time also. You put his name, people will come. Anyhow, already time is over. We will talk some other time. I should thank Dr. Venugopal. Just on one call, he has agreed to be with us. Thank you, Dr. Venugopal ji. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for your participation. So, Dr. Trupti, you can end the session.
I end the session for all. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.